Hello and welcome to Theology Untapped. My name is Andy. There are over 350 Christian denominations in the world. Some of them get along just fine, some of them don't. And there's the Catholic Church, Eastern Orthodox, Orthodox Church, Syriac Church, the Ethiopian Church. There's a lot of churches because throughout history, the church has been divided, split for one reason or the other. Maybe theology, maybe culture. We don't know for sure, but it happens. But what was the first time that the church split? Paul says, we are saved by grace of our Lord Jesus Christ alone. It's not by works, so that no one should boast. Then James comes along and says, faith without works is dead. So you can't really have one or the other, or you could try to blend them together. But at the end, either you're saved by grace or you have to show your faith. Which one would you agree with? Do you go with James or do you go with Paul? Well, see, I'm a Paulinist, so I go with Paul. But it's very difficult to explain what the differences are. We know that Paul was one of the first to write all the letters. And he was writing letters because as he was going around planting churches all over the Middle East, these Judaizers would come and try to take away what Paul was preaching. There was accusations of him not being the original 12 disciples, so therefore you shouldn't trust Paul. So Paul says, well, I'm going out into the Gentile world and I'll preach to them about Jesus Christ our Lord. And the church in Jerusalem was getting concerned. So at that time when Paul was preaching Jesus to the Gentile world, James was in charge, was the leader of the church in Jerusalem. Yeah, James was not the original 12 disciples either, but he was brother of our Lord Jesus Christ, half-brother of our Lord Jesus Christ. Didn't Jesus tell Peter that upon him, the rock, the church would be built? But somehow Peter lost that position in Jerusalem and James took over. But James was very concerned because you see, he was a Jewish person who believed in Jesus Christ, but he really wanted to keep his tradition. And he was concerned because what Paul was saying is exactly the opposite. Paul was saying, you don't have to believe in the Old Testament rules and regulations. Those are the exact reasons why Jesus came to save us from. That in spirit we have the freedom because we don't have the law anymore. So James was being concerned because James was telling people, if you want to be a Christian, you must confess and become a Jew first. So there was a conflict. So James calls Paul to Jerusalem to have a confrontation. But with the testimonies came along with all the miracles that was happening and all the Gentiles confessing Jesus Christ, James had no rebuttal. He had no choice but to say, okay, Paul, you could go and preach to the Gentiles, but leave the Jews alone. The Jews belong to me. He allowed Paul to preach the gospel, but only to the Gentiles. And this was the first split in the church. So the question for you is, do you follow Paul, who became the leader, who became the evangelist for the Gentiles, or do you follow James, who brought in the traditions of his old religion? Well, personally, I'm going to go with Paul. I'm not saying I'm going to reject Book of James, because it is there for a reason. There are a lot of things in Book of James that I could read and be blessed by. But I do believe Book of James was written to the 12 tribes of Israel. I'm not Jewish. I'm a Gentile. So I'm going to go with what Paul says. And I do agree more with Paul. We're saved by faith alone so that no one should boast. And what Paul says in Galatians chapter 1, verse 7, is that when he preaches the gospel and the Judaizers come and to kind of pervert the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. And Paul actually used the word pervert. They pervert the gospel of Jesus Christ and tells them that you need to also obey the law. Paul gets really upset about that. And what he says is, these guys come to pervert the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. And if they're doing that, let that person be accursed. Also, historically, Martin Luther said Book of James should not be in the New Testament. And there are numerous other people that did not agree. The New Testament books were already being circulated before the church got organized. And Book of James did not become part of the New Testament until the late 300 AD. And they don't even tell us why it was added on later on, except maybe James was the half-brother of Jesus Christ. So you got to ask yourself this question today. Do you believe you're saved by faith alone? Or do you believe faith without works is dead? You could do your best to combine them into your life. But at the end, you're going to have to choose one way or the other. And my suggestion is, go with what Paul said. Do not let others come along and pervert the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ with rules. Be free from that. That's exactly what Jesus came for us to be. So go with faith, my friends. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.